Hey, welcome back to the booth. Let's talk about the Plinky. This thing is the brainchild of a guy named Alex Evans. I think he's in London, England. And man, it is innovative, really, really different, powerful, exciting, and in some ways a little bit frustrating. You'll see right away it is really different than a lot of synthesizers. It's small, but it does pack a punch. Now, it's designed to be used in a Eurorack. So that's why it's the size and the form factor that it is. It is actually sold as a kit. Now, you can buy them online pre-assembled, but if you get it yourself, you have to solder it together. And I think it takes about an hour. I bought an assembled kit. In many ways, this thing is brilliant in a way that very few synths are. It has this 8x8 grid, which you use for playing and for programming. And all the parameters are adjustable and accessible through this front panel. And then these three knobs there. Along one side are CV inputs. The other side are CV outputs, so you can hook it up to your modular gear. Within the display, there's a lot of information. Not only does it show you the value of the parameters and the notes, but the waveforms, all of that kind of stuff. And I didn't even realize, but sometimes when you're editing a parameter in there and you have a digit, there's a little dot and then another number, and there's decimals. And they're so small that I didn't even see them when I first started using this thing. A lot of information packed into this display. Now, there's a synth in here, and it is quite powerful, sounds really big, really interesting. There's a digital delay that is pretty good. You know, it's got ping pong, and you can set a few parameters, but not a lot. There's a digital reverb that sounds wonderful, but once again, not very many parameters that you can adjust. That's okay. There's also a sequencer built in that is absolutely usable, and it has an arpeggiator. This thing does wavetables. Now, I think the original version didn't. When this thing came out, it was a big deal. Everybody was really excited about it. I think they had like 5,000 people had it on their wish list, and then they were only able to supply like 200. This is because of the chip shortage a few years ago, and that affected all the modular companies. So anyway, for about 2 years, these things were back ordered, and people could not get them, and they were waiting and waiting and waiting. I waited, and then I bought one now. And how do I feel about it? Wow. On one side, it's magnificent. It sounds really cool, and you can do a lot of different things with it. On the other side, I found it a little bit frustrating, and I'm going to get into both of those things. So not only does it have wavetables now, but you can do wavetable morphing. So let's listen to some of that. There's a bunch of lights in the front panel here, and they give you a lot of feedback while you're playing and stuff. So I'm going to turn this light out and just move my finger over the front so that you can get a sense of the lighting. The other thing is this whole surface, of which you've got 8 notes by 8 notes, this grid, it's pressure sensitive, and it's MPE. So it's very interesting because it's expressive, but I find it very frustrating because it's so small. I'm a small guy. I got really small hands, and I have a really hard time doing anything on this. Most of the videos that I've seen online are people that have programmed it, and they're listening to it, or they're hitting one note, and they're doing a drone, or they're doing a wavetable thing. But I don't see people actually performing with them, making much in terms of music, in terms of melodies or chords or compositions. Maybe it's not designed for that, but as you can see, it's designed to fit in a Eurorack. You know, most Eurorack stuff is programming. You're not actually there trying to play. So I think there's a bit of a problem there. I mean, I think that this thing has massive potential, and it's kind of missed the mark. This thing is a sampler. You can load up to 8 samples in there. Do them, just plug right in and sample. It divides them up into 8 slices, and then you can play those and modify them. The other thing this has, which is the main reason I bought it, is a granular engine. Normally when you have a sample, you could break it down to speed and pitch, and they're tied together. But with granular, you can separate them. So you can play that sample back slower or faster without affecting the pitch, or you can change the pitch without affecting the sample playback. So that's where you get into the granular engine and these granules that'll go move back and forth and morph the sound, and this thing does that. So think about it. You got a synth, sequencer, sampler, wavetables, the pressure-sensitive playing surface, and the fact that you can plug other stuff into it and run it through the internal effects. It's got built-in things to do that. And then you can do granule stuff. And this thing is only a few $100s. So I think because of that, it's a winner and people are really going to love it. But like I say, the playability is really limited. It's got a bunch of other cool parameters. It's got a random parameter, and I don't mean like a random LFO, sample and hold. I mean, every keystroke, it will play a different value. And you can program it that you want the value to be randomized by, 5% or 85%. Very powerful that way. The other thing they've done with this is on the Discord platform, there's a whole Plinky thing. So that means if you're a Plinky user, you can go onto Discord and set up a user for free and everything, and you can talk to other Plinky users. You can share sounds, you can share tips, you can help each other and inspire each other and all that kind of stuff. Now that's really great. The downside is because this is built by one guy and it's a very kind of small operation that does this, it's become kind of almost the replacement for tech support. Now, I believe in user forums for all the synths. I think that's a great thing, and I use them a lot. But that shouldn't replace good old-fashioned tech support from the manufacturer. Like I said, this display is so small that there's information that you can barely see in the display. So for me, what's the solution? Make the thing way bigger, twice as wide, twice as tall, 4 times this size in terms of form factor, and they would have a real winner on their hands because you'd be able to play it, you'd be able to read all of these parameters, and ideally the screen would be big enough that you could actually understand all the information that's there. Because right now, I don't have great eyesight, but this is really, really difficult and frustrating to use for me. So each of these pads has parameters that you can access. You either push one button and access one parameter, or hit the button beside it, hit that same pad, you've got a different parameter. So it's kind of good. It's pretty direct, but everything is so small, I have such a hard time reading it. Now, there's these rows and columns. Each one of these is organized in a separate way. The top one is the sound. The next one is the ADSR. The next one is all the effects. The next one is the arpeggiator or the sequencer, and so on and so forth. So it's a really good layout. It's quite intuitive. You get to understand it pretty quickly. So I recorded some of my own sounds into here and put them in and played with the granular engine. So let's listen to just a little bit of that, just modifying the sounds with grains. So the other thing is all the connections from this are here. So you've got your power, which is USB, audio in, audio out, And this is the newest version of the Plinky. I think it's the version 3. So it's actually got a MIDI in and out, just the 3.5 mil, so you have to have the little breakout cables. That's pretty cool. The earlier Plinkys didn't have that. You had to get a little add-on to access MIDI in and out. The other thing that's kind of cool, these connections, they have them on the bottom as well. So depending on what kind of setup you have, makes it a little bit easier. So what's it good for? It's good for sound sculpting, really good for that. Not so good for performing on or writing on. The mod matrix is really one of the better ones that I've seen. You can apply just about anything to modulate just about anything. Much more powerful things than a lot of other synths out there once you start to understand what you can do with this mod matrix. And you can multi-modulate. You can have multiple things modulating the same parameter. You got these two little potentiometers, A and B. You can apply those to all sorts of things and save that with your preset. You can use this to pick your value, or you can slide up this row. So it gives you the ability, you could kind of use it like a mod wheel and, modulate something and change the setting that way. I thought that was really brilliant and very useful. No volume knob. Like, I don't know. If I'm experimenting and sound sculpting, I want to be able to grab a volume knob and turn it down so I don't blow my speakers or something. So that would have been a really easy fix. So in a nutshell, it's affordable, sounds really big, really interesting. You can get a lot of different things out of it. It's great for experimentation. But for actually playing, writing, it just doesn't work for me. And I got this one from the good people at Perfect Circuit. And I have no affiliation with those guys. I paid for this thing, and I actually hadn't dealt with them before, but I was really impressed with their online store and their customer care. That's all I got for this time. Hope that my review and my experience with the Plinky has helped you determine whether it's right for you. The Plinky. Okay, the guy who invented it, he let his young child name it. Wouldn't have been my choice. See you next time.